Hi everybody, it's Chief Zero here, and with Rise of Iron set to release in just a couple of weeks, I kinda wanted to take this time to look back on Destiny since launch day, hell, even since the beta, and talk to you guys about what we've been able to do so far in these 3 short years since Destiny has come out, and what we've been able to accomplish as a community. Destiny released in September 9th, 2014 and featured a huge star-studded cast such as the likes of Peter Dinklage, Bill Nye, Lauren Cohan, Nathan Fillion, just to name a few. The amount of hype surrounding this game before launch was phenomenally huge compared to past games, especially on console. This was the first game that was supposed to be a massive multiplayer, online role-playing, first-person shooter game. Wow, that was a mouthful. After 10 plus years of working on Halo, Bungie decided to finally sell the rights to Microsoft to begin work on a new game, a new franchise, filled with endless possibilities of what you can do and explore our galaxy. And that game was Destiny. When players first booted up Destiny, they didn't know what to expect, how many planets we'd be able to visit, how many missions they would be able to take. The customization options seemed almost limitless in our minds. We wanted to believe in Destiny so much. We wanted to learn about the lore behind this universe that Bungie has created for us. We would not stop until every nook and cranny of every possible level and planet was uncovered, just so that we can get as much information as possible. Special events like the Queen's Wrath and the Rise of Iron make their appearances far and few and in between, except for the Queen's Wrath, which only popped up once until the House of Wolves DLC was released, as well as the Halloween celebratory day, where you can obtain a pumpkin head. However, once players realized that it did not matter how much they accomplished individually, they realized that they had to find ways to group up with other random strangers across the Destiny community just to be able to play the endgame activities, which provided no matchmaking whatsoever, and thus LFG was born. With LFG, solo players finally had the opportunity to attempt Destiny's hardest mission to date, the Vault of Glass. And in coming weeks, they could even attempt the hard version of that raid as well, and try to reach the pinnacle of the light level at that time. And with the raids now accessible to virtually everybody, players began to flock into Destiny like crazy, trying to learn the lore of it, finding new places to go within the planets, and even trying to attempt to find all of the secrets inside of the raid due to Bungie's very teasing cryptographic messages about hidden pathways in the Vault of Glass or secret chests that nobody has found, or even new mechanics that people have yet to discover. The Crucible began to fill up with guardians wielding the overpowered and extremely hard to find Vex Mythoclast. And soon Bungie and the players began to realize that in order to continue having the Crucible to be fun and competitive for all, changes needed to be made to the weapons. And so Bungie set forth to try to attempt to fix these weapons and give everybody an equal footing in the Crucible. While not everybody enjoyed the changes made to the Crucible, a lot of people believe that the community finally had a voice with Bungie and that they were able to influence the game, no matter how small or how big, to the world that they were living in. As the weeks go by and players began to unravel all of the secrets in Destiny, players began to finally kick themselves over the fact that many of them overlooked an exotic weapon simply because they thought it would be a waste of an exotic space, as well as the perks seemed kind of dull. And that weapon was Galahorn. Those who were curious enough to buy Galahorn from Youre on the first or second week of Destiny, or even just get it as a drop from Crucible, because remember, exotics used to drop from Crucible matches, were deemed some of the most luckiest players in the game. Being able to kill bosses in a few shots with their Galahorn led the pack on all of these raids. And unfortunately, it became a stigma that if you didn't have a Galahorn at that time, you weren't deemed good enough to continue playing with higher leveled people, and thus became a requirement in order to join LFG groups. But that did not stop the influx of people going into LFG left and right simply to get the opportunity to get this weapon. After a while, with all of the farming going on, players began to ask themselves what the next great adventure in Destiny was going to be like. Fortunately for them, the DLC was just right around the corner. Not 3 months after the game first shipped were we going to get our first downloadable pack, In the Dark Below. Released on December 9th, 2014, The Dark Below gave us new weapons, armor, gear, new light level to reach at 32, a cooperative strike, 3 new Crucible maps, new story missions, including a special patrol for planets to kill the Blades of Crota, and introduced us to one of our more creepy vendors in the tower with Eris Morn, and to top it all off, they gave us a new 6-player raid called Crota's End. Although we did get to find out a little bit more about the Hive and how they fit into the world of Destiny, players were keen on attempting the new raid by themselves or even with groups of friends to try to see how many glitches, bugs, and cheeses they could find. And boy did they find what they were looking for. Crota's End became the first raid in Destiny to become soloable, if that's even a word. Anyways, Crota's End was the first raid that you can do on your own without any outside help, and it was one of the cheesiest raids ever. Many people found this raid to be comically easy after a certain point amount of time, despite all of the glitches and bugs that would occur when you're fighting Crota himself. This was still an easier raid to do than Vault of Glass, and people were a little bit pissed off at that, to be quite honest. However, easier does not equal more enjoyable, as the final fight with Crota was riddled with bugs that extended the raid from maybe just a couple of hours to 6 or 8, mainly because it was so glitchy and people became so frustrated that they had lost at the last second because Crota either stood up a little bit too early or found some way to enter inside the building that you were all hiding in and just completely wipe you all out. To some people, this was just a minor inconvenience simply because the reward was greater than the risk, with the reward being a Black Hammer, a legendary sniper rifle with the legendary perk White Nail, which basically gives it infinite ammo on each third precision shot. Eris Morn also brought new bounties for the Guardians to complete, and even though they were a little bit less inconsequential to the whole aspect of the thing, it was rather nice for Guardians to do something else besides complete the normal Vanguard and Crucible bounties. However, players also felt like they had been cheated out of their game simply because if you did not purchase the Dark Below DLC, you would find that you were shut out of all of the higher level activities such as the Nightfall, daily mission, and even some of the strikes. However, if you did buy the Dark Below DLC, you would also find that a lot of your progress from vanilla Destiny pre-DLC meant nothing. Not really. With a new light level cap being raised, you would find yourself that a lot of your weapons and armors from vanilla Destiny were completely obsolete. You could just simply buy better equipment from the vendors, and while some people thought that it was a little bit easier to do it that way, other people felt like they had wasted their time completing all of those hours in the Vault of Glass just trying to get a Vex Mythic class or a Fatebringer or anything like that. Those that had bought the DLC quickly found out that they were not able to play with their friends who had not yet purchased the DLC as well, completely locking their friends out of the game simply because they could not buy the DLC. With all of these negatives soon stacking up, players felt like they didn't really need to play Destiny anymore simply because they were afraid that their progress would just be erased again, just like when the DLC came out. A lot of it felt hopeless, that it didn't matter how much you played or how many hours you grinded, you would just have to start all over again, completely new each and every time, so there was no point to it all. A lot of people left Destiny at this time, and a lot of them blamed Bungie for this, and honestly, they're not wrong. Bungie handled it terribly, forcing people to choose whether or not they want to spend $20 just to play with their friends, or not, and just not play Destiny anymore. With thousands of Destiny players leaving at this time, people wondered whether or not Bungie can come back with this. The community had sent their message that they wanted things fixed, that they wanted to make it feel like their progress mattered no matter what year or what DLC it was going to be. And now, the ball was in Bungie's court. What they would do next would determine whether or not Destiny was going to survive as a game. Releasing in May 19th, 2015, the House of Wolves had a lot to live up to. For many, this was going to either make or break Destiny for players, as this was the culmination of the season pass that people were able to buy for the DLCs. Whether or not they actually wanted to spend future money on future DLCs was going to depend on how this DLC turns out. And Bungie knew this. If they wanted to keep the players coming back for more and pay for more future DLC, they needed to hit this one out of the park. So with this DLC, they introduced a new social space, the Vestian Outpost, new weapons, armor, and gear. They raised the maximum light level to 34. They added more story missions than the Dark Below. They added more Crucible maps, and including a new strike. And 2 new game types that continue on even to this day and are still considered viable. The first being the Prison of Elders, a horde-like mode in which 3 guardians entered to try to defeat Skolas, the main protagonist of the story for this DLC. You fight through 5 waves of different sorts of enemies, each with random modifiers that made the game a little bit more interesting, and after the 5th wave, when you think you're all done, you enter into the 6th wave, where you finally fight Skolas, to the death, mind you. The second game mode introduced was Trials of Osiris, one of the most popular modes even to this day. Trials of Osiris is deemed as the hardest challenge to complete in Destiny, simply because it's a player versus player game type where your light actually matters, just like Iron Banner, except that this one comes weekly. Every Friday through Monday, you and 2 other guardians can try to go flawless to try to reach a second new social space, only available to those who have won 9 games without any losses, the Lighthouse. Once there, players were able to obtain some of the most rarest weapons, armor, emblems, and shaders in the game. With Prison of Elders catering to the PvE players and Trials of Osiris catering to the PvP players, people began to wonder whether or not this DLC was going to be worth it. They all had to ask themselves again, am I gonna have to start all over again? Does the Dark Below gear matter anymore? Am I gonna have to spend countless hours grinding just to get something that's only gonna be replaceable with the next DLC? And with 2 words, players finally had the answer that they had been waiting for. Those 2 words, Etheric Light. This material boosted all Year 1 weapons, armor, legendary, exotics, any of those to the current max light level. At 365, all of your items from the Vault of Glass, the Year 1 weapons you've been collecting before the DLC of Dark Below, and even the weapons and armor pieces from the Dark Below was now viable again. And with that, people were so excited that they considered doing the Vault of Glass over and over again just for the same weapons that they had wanted to get, that they got rid of the first time around because they weren't viable anymore. In my opinion, this was one of the better times in Destiny, simply because finally there was so much to do in Destiny that you almost didn't have enough time to actually complete everything. You had 2 raids to complete, Nightfalls, Iron Banner, Trials of Osiris, even the Prison of Elders was completely viable. Everything that you did at that time was viable. To get you new gear, new exotics, everything. All you had to do was play. With many of Destiny's problems finally being addressed, there was only one question left on everybody's mind. Is there a raid? Fearing the same backlash that they had with the Dark Below DLC, Bungie decided to opt out of a raid for this DLC simply because they wanted to get it right. They didn't want a raid that was half-assed, rushed, and only made just to fill in space. Instead, they put more focus on Crucible this time around, trying to balance more weapon changes, giving us more ways to play, as well as giving us this opportunity to make everything from Year 1 viable. For the first time in Destiny, players felt like they had too much to do, and that was a good problem to have, simply because now they knew that everything that they did in Destiny, whether it be PvE or PvP, meant something, that they could use an etheric light to ascend whatever they wanted to the newest highest maximum level, and that was a good thing. For the first time in a long time, people were finally excited about Destiny again, what the future can hold, what possible threat can challenge us now that we have all of the armor pieces and all of the weapons that we wanted from year one. Fortunately, we didn't have to wait that long because the next DLC was going to drop in just 4 months, and you can bet we were pumped. On September 15th, 2015, The Taken King finally dropped, and with it, some of the biggest changes to come out of Destiny as of yet. Including new supers, new subclasses, everything was remade from the ground up for Destiny The Taken King that it seemed like a completely new game. Even the new story elements were completely different than what was shown before. These characters now had personalities. We had beautiful cutscenes to detail all of this. The light level was completely rehauled. Everything that you put on your Guardian now meant something. Nothing was just a cosmetic choice. Now everything had a purpose to either help you or change the way that you play. The economy in Destiny changed as well. Gone were the days of Vanguard marks, Crucible marks, commendations. Everything was just streamlined into a single currency to buy things with legendary marks. There were no more caps on how many you can earn per week. Instead, you can only max out at 200 legendary marks, but the amount that you can get per week was infinite. In The Taken King, it was your job to investigate and eliminate the new taking threat that has entered our solar system, led by the worm god Oryx. After killing his son Crota, Oryx wanted revenge. Everything that stood in Oryx's way was completely decimated, including the Queen's own army. So we take the fight to Oryx and in turn open up a new patrol zone for Guardians, Oryx's Dreadnought. This was the first new explorable area that Guardians can now enter through. And for the first time since the Dark Below, we finally got a new raid, King's Fall, in which we would later get on a hard mode version of it, as well as something brand new, Challenge Mode. Challenge Mode required you to kill the bosses in the raid in a specific manner in order to earn exclusive rewards at the highest maximum level. With the challenges rotating each week, it was something new and always something new to obtain with each one. Many began to wonder whether or not the old raids would also receive this challenge treatment, simply because the old raids and everything back in year one was simply some of the best memories that they've had trying to acquire their specific weapons, certain armor sets, and everything. Unfortunately, that did not come to pass. However, Bungie did meet us middle way and in turn gave us some of the weapons from year one and made them into year two variants. All with new roles that could possibly drop from each weapon. These were something that you can definitely farm for from strikes, from packages, and so on and so forth. Old favorites like the Fatebringer, Vision of Confluence, and Black Hammer were brought back for year 2 in different variants, some of them even exotics. The Black Spindle being an exotic variant of the Black Hammer simply because of how overpowered Black Hammer was in year 1. And in some cases, the only way to get these legendary and exotic items was to do something extremely fantastical. Every now and then on daily missions, you have the chance for a secret sort of ending per se on some of the missions. For some, it required you to retread old ground to find new hidden passages, and some required you to look for things that weren't there before. There were so many secrets to find in The Taken King that it almost felt like a completely new game. People retreaded old grounds from other missions that they thought they had found everything for, only to be surprised by finding something new there. People were now asking what was next for Destiny, when the next DLC was going to come out. Bungie did state that they would stop doing the smaller DLC packs throughout the year and instead focus on just one big DLC a year, simply because it was just too much work and too much demand for all of this, when instead they could be doing free smaller updates. These updates included the Festival of the Lost, the Sparrow Racing League, and Crimson Days. The Taken King also introduced a new mechanic to raise the light level as well as the power level of your Guardian, and it was called Infusion. Taking the place of Ascension, Infusion essentially made you give up one powerful piece of armor to upgrade another weaker one. In order to bring it back to the levels, although you did have to do a little bit of guesswork to determine how much it was going to be infused by, many people were not exactly thrilled with this idea because it felt like you were just wasting a really strong piece of armor or weapon for a weaker one. With its biggest update being the April update, which brought back the Prison of Elders to Year 2 with Taken variants, as well as a streamlined infusion system that brought every item 1-to-1. The April update also saw the biggest change in Crucible yet. Everything felt a lot more balanced and viable, as well as people tried out new loadouts for their guardians. People began to find old favorites and old weapons that they would have never used before simply because they were just plain bad. Overpowered weapons and even the underpowered weapons now seemed viable in the Crucible, and for the first time since Destiny finally came out, it seemed like Crucible was finally on equal footing with everybody, no matter what they used. The Taken King also introduced Destiny to microtransaction. By using real money, you can purchase silver, used at the Eververse trading shop to buy emotes and other vanity items. Initially, this caused an uproar within the community simply because players now believed that Destiny had become a pay-to-win type of game. Fortunately, that was not the case, as the items sold in the Eververse Trading Company had no real effect on the gameplay itself. Now, one of the best things to come out of the Taken King besides the expanded vault space was the exotic collections. Now we didn't have to be worried about dismantling old favorite exotics simply because we didn't want to lose it. Now, once you've unlocked it in the Taken King, you can just repurchase the Year 1 or Year 2 version of that exotic. Overall, I feel like the Taken King did a lot of good to revitalize the Destiny community, and I personally can't wait for Rise of Iron to hit so I can get my new Gallahorn again. I'm super excited! And that's my video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look back at Destiny with me. Whether or not you've fallen out of love with Destiny or not, or you're still continuing the grind, I hope this brought back at least a little bit of nostalgia for you. Let me know what I missed down in the comments, and let me know about your stories throughout Destiny. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to me, guys. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help my channel grow immensely if you guys did all of that. I'll be posting a lot more videos on Rise of Iron as it hits. We'll be doing walkthroughs, tutorials, everything. Don't forget to follow me on the social media at the end of the video. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Chief out.